Welcome class, this is the first video of Year 12 Economics and in particular Unit 3 Outcome 1 where we're going to start to cover microeconomics. This is an introductory video and really going to cover one key important aspect, which is our first key knowledge point from our study guide. I hope by the end of this video you understand the concepts of relative scarcity, needs, wants, what a resource is in terms of economics, and this important concept of an opportunity cost. And we're also going to cover something called a production possibility frontier. What do we mean by relative scarcity? All comes down to this concept of what is a need and what is a want. When we talk about a need in economics, we are talking about a good or service that we have deemed to be necessary for survival. So it is vital for our survival. You need it. In your heart, you know that you need this product, you need this service for survival. Now that is different to a want. It is still a good or service, so it is still important, it is still something that you want, but it is not necessary for survival. So we do not need it for survival. However, the consumption of it is going to add to the quality of your life. So there is a key difference here. Needs, necessary for survival. A want is something that you don't need, is not going to be necessary for survival, but will improve your quality of life. And these needs and wants are different for different people, different for different countries, because what might be considered a need by some individuals, for example, in rich countries like Australia, might be seen as something that is more of a want, unfortunately, in a less developed nation because the inequality of resources and the inequality of income. So, for example, in Australia, you might consider the access to internet to be a 100% need. You need it for survival, to have a job and to have a good quality of life. But in other countries, that might not be deemed a need and more something that they want because they are more worried about food and those sorts of things. So there are some obvious needs like food, air, healthcare, potentially education, but then there's lots of other ones. Now, what I want you to do for a couple of minutes is to come up with as many needs and wants that you would consider in your personal life in 2 minutes. So I'm trying to separate them into what are needs and what are wants. And as you are doing that, I want you to think of this question. Can you think why there could be an issue with needs and wants? And it all comes down to this concept that we're going to talk about in a second, relative scarcity. Hopefully you've done that task and you've realized the lists of needs and wants can become really, really big. So here comes the major problem of economics, this concept of relative scarcity. This is such a problem, we are going to call it the basic economic problem. And this arises due to the fact that we actually have infinite needs and wants. The list of our needs and wants is potentially, if infinite, it is massive. And it is far greater than the finite resources that exist are available to produce. So to put it simply, we have virtually unlimited needs and wants, and you can see some examples here: food, clothing, shelter, security, comfort, medicine, recreation, and limited resources. And we're going to go into what those resources are in a second. Now, the economy is a place where we try and solve that problem. This is where all of these scarce resources are allocated among our competing requirements, competing needs and wants to try and come up with the best possible problem. And the job of economists is to come up with the best possible solution to this issue of relative scarcity. So what are the resources in an economy? We in Year 12 Economics are going to say that there are 3 resources, and we call them factors of production. We call them factors of production because resources are factors of production because they are inputs used in production of goods and services that are used to meet the needs and wants. They are factors of production because they are things used in production of goods and services. And we separate them into 3 categories, and we're going to use these terms when answering questions. Land or natural resources. These are resources that occur in nature. That's the key point there. Labor. So this is the mental and physical effort by humans in the production process. And capital. These are the resources that have been made by combining labor and natural resources to create the sophisticated inputs. And we're going to go through that in a second. Now, some might argue that there is a 4th resource called entrepreneurship or enterprise. This is all the expertise and knowledge and skills used in businesses. So to summarize, to get our end product, which we're going to call goods and services, we are going to have natural resources. We are going to use labor, so people, and capital. So we put our natural resources, combine them with labor, so people, and capital, which are the machines that we have made previously. And this is how we produce goods and services. When we talk about land or natural resources, these are all the things that come from nature. So I'm talking about, for example, water, or the agricultural products like farming, so cattle, what we grow, which ultimately creates our food. But I'm also talking things about the vast land that we use, and then also the things that we produce in mining and all those other things like oil and gas and iron ore and all those things that are produced in the natural world. So these are our raw materials, our inputs. When I talk about labor, I'm talking about all the mental and physical effort that humans provide. There are multiple different types of jobs in modern society, and we are talking about people doing work. For example, it looks like these are tradies, educators, so teachers, scientists. But you can see that just from this image here, all the different types of jobs that people can do, ranging from mining, airline pilots, businessmen and women, chefs, significant amount. Now, in economics, we are also interested, of course, in whether this is being efficient. Are we using all our labor resources effectively? And what is the level of unemployment or people that are not being part of the labor resource? Capital is probably the most confusing one. This is what is created when we combine resources, so natural resources, and labor to build things that are often used to help us in the production of goods and services. This can be lots of heavy machinery, or the factories, the tools, the methods of transport like trains. Looks like I've got another factory here. But in the modern world, I'm also talking about all the computers, artificial intelligence, all of that that's been created. Now, what is the solution to relative scarcity when I have unlimited wants and needs and limited resources? hopefully one of the problems is economics. Because economics is the discipline that tries to improve humanity by overcoming this problem. Scarcity makes it necessary for economic agents, so people, to make decisions to allocate resources the best. To meet their needs and wants. They need to make choices. So the solution to relative scarcity are making good choices of how we are going to allocate our resources. And that's a bit messy there. And what are those choices? What are we going to produce? How are we going to produce it? And for whom we're going to produce it. That is the job of an economist. And with this choice comes a really important concept called opportunity cost. When we have to make choices, often we have to make a choice which means giving something up. An opportunity cost is a technical term for that because we consider it the value of the next best alternative that is foregone whenever a choice is made. So when I am making a choice between two needs that I believe I want, and I can only have one of them, I'm going to say, well, I've decided to, for example, to spend $20 on clothes because I need them. The next best alternative potentially for that $20 was to spend it on something else. For example, going to a movie. So my opportunity cost of buying the clothes was giving up seeing a movie. So to technically talk about this, when we are talking about the opportunity cost, we are talking about the loss of production, the production foregone, that occurs when scarce resources are used in their best alternative. So the opportunity cost is equal to the value of the next best alternative. And this is important to consider because we are always trying to work out what is the most efficient allocation of our resources. Where can we put our productive inputs in a way that maximizes the satisfaction of society's needs and wants? So we are maximizing the use of our resources if the choice that we have made is more beneficial than the next best alternative, which is our opportunity cost. So what is the opportunity cost of doing your economics homework tonight, which hopefully you're doing, is you could have used your time in many other ways. So we can start to use the concept, maybe you could have watched a movie, played video games, or hung out with friends, or maybe even done maths homework. So we can start to say, I am going to do economics homework tonight and forego doing maths homework. And you're going to have to make a decision which of those is the best one to do. So we can start to think about, if I gave you $1,000, what would you spend it on? If I gave you $1,000, what would you spend it on? The opportunity cost would be, if I gave you another $1,000 the next day, what would you spend that $1,000 on? Now, I'm only going to give you $1,000, but once you've thought about what you would spend your second $1,000 on, this option is your opportunity cost. So this illustrates the concept of choice. And when we start to think about our economy, we can simplify it into something called our production possibility frontier. A company, a business, a country often has resources and they must make choices about what they're going to produce. A production possibility frontier illustrates the choices that someone might have on how to allocate their scarce resource. We are simplifying it into a trade-off between producing two specific goods or services. So it illustrates the concept of opportunity cost. So in this figure here, we are assuming that this business can either make guitars or computers. And it has scarce resources, so it can't make unlimited numbers of each. So each one of these they're going to have a choice. If they want to increase their production of guitars, they're going to have to sacrifice production of computers. So at point E, they could have a choice of making it looks like 350 guitars and 100 computers. Now, if we compare that, say, with point C, it looks like they can make 175 guitars and roughly 450 computers. So we can start to say the opportunity cost of increasing their production of computers by 350 is giving up 175 guitars. Because you can see there, when we go from 100 to 450 computers, the guitar production has reduced. And this is illustrated again here with the combinations. Now the question then is, what is the best part? What is the best choice this business can make? We can start to analyze a production possibility frontier. How can we start to analyze it? If we're considering point A, movement along the production possibility frontier will produce more of a goods and services, but will create an opportunity cost. So as we move up or down this line, as we discussed previously, I'll put point A here, the business is giving up, making a choice and thinking about opportunity cost. At this point in time, anything outside the production possibility frontier, point B, is not possible today. This is the issue of relative scarcity. They do not have the resources to make anything outside the possibility frontier. Potentially with technology or trade or having more labor and increase in resources, they could potentially move outside. Countries may expand their productive capacity if they do discover more resources or more efficient production processes. So if we discover more resources or become more efficient, you might find that this production possibility frontier shifts to the right. Point D says anything inside this production possibility, point D, indicates we are being inefficient. We are not allocating our resources effectively because we are not maximizing what we can produce. Now that might be because resources are not being used efficiently. We might have too much unemployment, so labor is not being effective, or our productivity is not being maximized. And with that, guys, that hopefully covers some important topics as an introduction to economics. Relative scarcity, the importance of understanding the key economic problem that we have infinite needs and wants and finite resources. So we need to consider the concept of opportunity cost, the next best alternative, and then we can start to make decisions or understand the tough decisions businesses and economies make on how to allocate their resources to maximize production, to maximize our needs and wants. Hope I see you watching more videos and we cover more concepts of microeconomics.